you know, before founding NESTRE, was a college football player here locally, played football defensive back at UCF, here, and aspirations to go play pro ball. But my career was ended with head injuries. And so I had 6 concussive blows within a 4-week span and, ended my playing career. And, typically they tell you all of the things around, give it some time and, so on and so forth and stay out of light. But none of it didn't get better. I started to experience, mental and cognitive impairment and decline um, that continued on so much so our personal doctor for 20 years sat my wife and I down and literally said the science says this doesn't get any better. It only gets worse, and so you're going to need to prepare yourself and get life in order because your wife's going to have to take care of you for the rest of your life. I'm in my mid 20s,
Man.
if you can imagine. Just had our first child, and so I remember leaving that appointment. And if you can recall, around the same time was when a lot of the conversation around football and head injuries um, and players were going through some of those experiences. My wife was watching it, all of the stuff, the symptoms that they were talking about, and seeing me go through it in real time. And I just remember just thinking like, man, she didn't sign up for this, or what's my son will never know the real me. Um, and I just remember going like, man, I just can't go out like this. Like, you know, if I can't do it, I gotta fight my way through it, right? And I remember pleading and convincing my wife, like, look, give me a chance to figure it out, to see if I can fix it. If they're telling me no one else can fix it, give me a chance to see if I can.
How do I know what I think until I see what I say?
The Green Notebook, carried by military leaders around the world. Within those pages are sweat, tears, triumphs, and the hard-won lessons of life. Lessons worth sharing. Each week, the team dives into the notebooks of military leaders, business professionals, authors, athletes and coaches, and entertainers to share lessons and help you lead with the best version of yourself.
Welcome to another episode of From the Green Notebook. I'm your host, Joe Byerly, and today we're diving into the Green Notebooks of Dr. Tommy Shavers and Carlos Perez, a retired Special Forces officer from NESTRE Health Performance, a mental and cognitive strength training company that leverages neuroscience and AI technology to personalize how people get better, feel better, and perform better. Now, this episode is a little different than our normal conversations. First of all, I'm not recording from my home office. I don't have to worry about the dog barking or like this mom and pop setup that I have where books are stacked everywhere and I've got the camera up. I got to travel down to Lake Nona, Florida, where the team at NESTRE brought me into their performance center and walked me through their cognitive assessment and training process firsthand. And honestly, over the course of about 24 hours, they completely changed the way I think about performance. Because for most of my life, especially in the military, I focused on training the body, building discipline, and filling my mind with ideas through reading and experience. But I never stopped to think about the brain itself as something that could be trained, not just mentally tougher, but measurably stronger, more efficient, better balanced. And what Tommy and Carlos showed me is that the brain works a lot like the body. It adapts, it responds to stress, and with the right training, it can improve. In this conversation, we talk about Tommy's journey from college football player to cognitive performance pioneer after multiple concussions nearly derailed his life. We talk about Carlos' experience in Special Forces and why he immediately saw the potential for this training inside elite military organizations. And then we get into my own experience going through the assessments and the training that NESTRE provided and what they saw when they popped the hood on my brain. Why so many veterans and high performers struggle to turn their minds off, and what happens when your brain gets stuck operating in survival mode long after the mission is over. And what makes this conversation so fascinating is that it challenges the way many of us think about mental performance altogether. It's not something that's fixed, but it's something that can be measured, trained, and improved over time. So grab your green notebooks and please welcome to the show Dr. Tommy Shavers and Carlos Perez. All right, so this is an absolutely amazing opportunity. Typically, I'm filming in my home office. I've got all my equipment stacked on top of books, but this time I'm in Go Local Studios in Lake Nona, Florida, with the team from NESTRE. And over the last literally 24 hours, they've completely opened my eyes uh, to a paradigm shift on how my brain works and what I can do to have really continue my performance past the military with my brain. And right now, I am only living on coffee because I did my first brain workout this morning, and I am dying right now. So I'm gonna try to make it through this episode. Um, but I'm here with the founder of Nestre, Dr. Tommy Shavers and Carlos Perez. And what I want to do first is have Carlos introduce himself and his background, and then we'll dive into Tommy's background a little bit, and then talk about some of the feedback I've gotten in the last 24 hours. It's really going to help me moving forward. So, Carlos, Tommy, welcome to the show. And Carlos, we'll start with you. Could you share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and where you come from?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Really appreciate the time. Great to finally meet you and spend some time. Yeah, Carlos Perez. I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Went to school in Miami, University of Miami, and then I went in the Army. Went through the ROTC program, became an officer in military intelligence, straight into special operations as an intel officer. So I served in the 160th Aviation Regiment. I was in 3rd Battalion in Savannah, Georgia. And then I decided to go Special Forces. So I did selection and made it through, went to the Q course, and I went to the 7th Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I was stationed there most of my career, deployed multiple times to Latin America and the Middle East, mainly to Afghanistan, did a few tours there. And then I ended up in Tampa, Florida. I ended up at SOCOM, retired back in 2012, and came back in as a GS, government service employee, for a few years. Did that for a little bit and decided to transition over to the private sector. So been in Tampa for about 18 years now. I ran a company called Skyburst Tactical. I was the president for about 9 years, defense contracting firm. And then I took some time off, and about a year and a half ago, I came across through a mutual friend that works at the Naval Postgraduate School. I found out about NESTRE and about Dr. Shavers. Went through the training, went through the baseline assessment, and I was immediately hooked. I said, "Hey, how do I get in here? How can I help? What can I do to help and get the word out, get this out to the folks?"
Nice. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Carlos, and we'll get in a little bit about your experience with Nestre in a minute, but I want to switch over to you, Dr. Shavers. I remember I met our mutual friend TJ Harden at the Army All American Bowl back in December, and he told me a little bit about your story and how you started looking at the brain as a muscle that could be trained, and like kind of your literally it's almost like a superhero origin story, the way it happened. But I wonder if you could share that with our audience.
Yeah, no, would love to. Excited to be on. This is awesome. You were hanging out with us, on the podcast, and so it's great to be able to come spend some time. And so, you know, before founding Nestry, was a college football player here locally. Played football defensive back at UCF here, and aspirations to go play pro ball, and but my career was ended with head injuries, and so I had 6 concussive blows within a 4-week span, and ended my playing career. And typically they tell you all of the things around give it some time, and so on and so forth, and stay out of light, and but none of it didn't get better. I started to experience mental and cognitive impairment and decline um, that continued on, so much so our personal doctor for 20 years sat my wife and I down, and literally said the science says this doesn't get any better. it only gets worse. And so you're going to need to prepare yourself and get life in order because, your wife's going to have to take care of you for the rest of your life. I'm in my mid 20s.
Man.
If you can imagine, just had our first child. And so, I remember leaving that appointment. And if you can recall, around the same time was when a lot of the conversation around football and head injuries um, and players were going through some of those experiences. My wife was watching it, all of the stuff, the symptoms that they were talking about, and seeing me go through it in real time. And I just remember just thinking like, man, she didn't sign up for this, or what's my son will never know the real me. Um, and I just remember going like, man, I just can't go out like this. Like, you know, if I can't do it, I gotta fight my way through it, right? And I remember pleading and convincing my wife, like, look, give me a chance to figure it out, to see if I can fix it. If they're telling me no one else can fix it, give me a chance to see if I can. If it's never been done before, let me be the first to do it. And what else do I have to lose? And so she finally agreed and let me see if I could change it. And, I was kind of test subject one. And I just started with a premise that made sense to me. And it was they're telling me my brain is injured and it's declining as a result. And so if it serves the reason my brain is injured, then it serves the reason it functions similarly as a muscle. And if it can be injured, it potentially can be rehabbed, strengthened, or repaired. So what would that look like? And I just went to create what I call the cognitive conversion theory. I had the unfortunate and fortunate privilege of having injuries as a player and knowing that process kind of like the back of my hand. Like, so I know what physical rehab looks like. I've had surgeries, brought back to play. What would cognitive rehab look like? And I started to create a cognitive recovery model, and from that, discover that there was a science, you know, neuroplasticity that aligned with the model, and I built it from there. Actually recovered my own cognition, had a chance to share about my story at Harvard's Global Health Catalyst Summit. And what got me curious and excited was that if this science is the established science that the brain is responsive and adaptive, then why are we not looking at training the mind and the brain the way we've trained the body? Like we've seen the evolution of physical training. Why don't we just do the same thing? And so I went and just started consuming reading around the space and was looking for the world's tops in the space and cold calling them and saying, hey, I got this idea. Is it crazy or is it legit? And they were like, we've never thought about it this way. And I didn't understand that at first, but now I know is because most people thought about the brain from a pathology perspective. I was coming from a performance world. And so it was a innovative way of thinking, but for me it was native. And so that became the curiosity, that became the seeds for Nestre is what if we could train the mind and the brain the way we train the body? What if we could elevate the baseline of human potential through training? And what would it look like to make mind and brain fitness a lifestyle? And that's really how we got the seeds of what we're doing now with Nestre.
Yeah, and I think like going back to my conversation with TJ and what really drew me to your story into Nestri is that, you worked your way back from several concussions on the athletic field. And I was thinking back to 2007. I remember I had an IED event happen on the left side of my striker while I was up out of the hatch. I remember one of the guys inside. He had a really bad brain bleed and had to be evacuated, and my head hurt for like 3 weeks afterwards, like this sharp pain in my head. And at the time, and Carlos, you can relate, man. Like you're seeing guys lose limbs, lose their lives, and so when you have a head injury, you're like, man, that's like, that's not as bad as those guys. At least that was the thinking at the
Mhm.
time. And then we were just exposed to blast after blast over the course of 15 months. And it's and I was wondering, like, man, do I have lingering effects from that? And if I do, is that something I could train to overcome? And so it's super fascinating because like we were talking about today, like, we'll talk about yesterday. Actually, we'll go back to yesterday when I first went through the NESTRE scan process.
Yeah.
I learned so much in just that little bit of time with you guys. It confirmed some stuff, and then it also showed me some areas where I could work on. And I was wondering if we could kind of talk about my results, that you sat down and gave to me behind closed doors, but actually share them on this episode.
I think it'd be great. So I mean, anytime I get a chance to pop the hood and and
Oh,
and talk
he
talk
loves it.
talk brain, we get to and so we talked about, because I love going, what if we can pop the hood and quantify your greatness? What if we can show you your
Mhm.
superpowers, your greatness and your gaps, which is actually your recipe? Because most of the time people just think about your strengths. Well, it's your strengths, and you know I refer to a weakness as a weakness is only a weakness if you're trying to operate in it. Otherwise, it's just not your identity, And so we talked about both yesterday, and so the first piece. Let's start with what we saw around what we call your superpowers, right? And first, that the piece that stood out, we talked about was top three elite areas were your visual attention, visual accuracy, and your recognition, right? And also, just for the listeners and viewers, we 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 told Joe, don't tell us anything,
Mhm.
because we want to tell you about you from your data, right? And so the first things, that top three areas, performing, were the visual attention, visual accuracy, and the recognition. And then we go, okay, so you got to tell us, how is this you? Because we know it's you, but how is it you? And so,
Yeah, I mean, like, I think, one of the things we talked about real quick, I'm going to pause here and just say, we had this conversation yesterday with Tommy and Chloe on the Better Mind podcast. And, out of all the things I've done recently, I was definitely an imposter on this one because you guys have interviewed gold medal athletes, you've interviewed NFL Hall of Famers. And so I was honored to be on there, but I'll go back to
no, it was awesome having you. It was
yeah,
phenomenal.
I'll go back to your thing is like, in the military, when you're in combat, you're constantly scanning, when you're out on patrols. And then it's ingrained in you in training, to always be looking around, to taking in your environment. And then as you get out of training, and, the military is a hierarchical organization where you're climbing the ranks. So you're constantly like reading the room if you're going in and giving a briefing. You're looking at the senior leader's face, like, does he get what I'm saying? Or does she understand what I'm saying? Do I need to tweak this a little bit? Is that person yawning? Is that person rolling your eyes? So it's like you're constantly scanning, not just like for violent threats, but like, threats to, people thinking you're a moron. And so I think like after time, like that just becomes like wired into you as, as a military leader, is to be able to do those things. And then, as you're looking out at it, whether it's a battlefield, a training event, whatnot. And I mean, Carlos, you could probably relate too. Like you're looking for things that may go wrong. So you're constantly scanning the environment for those things that you need to be prepared to react to as a leader. So I think like, I can't help it, man. Like my brain just, that's how it performs now.
So there were two other things that were unique under high load. Um, well, the first thing it said was, you were built to operate under pressure. Like you were built for that. But we saw it in the data, because two things that stood out. One, under that high pressure, high load, one of your top performing areas was logical processing, which is rare from a data standpoint, because typically when we get more high stress, high load, we become less logical.
Mhm.
And so the fact that in high stress, fast paced decisions, you have the ability to stay anchored in logic and reason, you're the kind of person that we should be leaning on in those moments of, hey, what do we got to do? Right. And so, and then also mood regulation. Like it was literally telling us you enjoy being in the high stake, high demand, novel, moving, fast paced, environments. And so looking at those pieces, those parts of your recipe, and then the communication part. Communication was another part that was core around the superpowers. And so you start putting these pieces together, you start to get a snapshot of what we say was your recipe for greatness. And everybody's unique in that sense. But the cool part is it tells us the story. And so we got a chance to tell that to you without you telling us. And how would you say it?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times we were talking about this too, like earlier before we hit record, is it like, all the time, like when Carlos and I were coming up in our careers, especially, when Carlos became a Green Beret, like you're constantly being assessed, you're taking assessments, you're filling stuff out, you're talking to an operational psych. And, like there's times you wonder, like, what is it, am I like saying something, or am I filling out a bubble, thinking in a certain mindset?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is the first time I've ever sat in anything where I didn't like
Yeah.
provide any information. You told
Yeah.
me what you saw. Was it?
Yeah, no, I wanted to jump in before you said that, because that's when the light bulb came on when I first met Tommy. I was like, wait, stop. So you mean you're mind reading, basically. You're popping the hood and that's exactly right, Joe. I mean, in the military, and especially in the elite units, you go through a myriad of personality examinations and traits, Myers-Briggs and all these psychological assessments. But that's all it is. It's all personality. So you can bias those, and you can, test them out in multiple ways. But this, in 3 minutes, there's no, you can't lie. It's your digital footprint. It's, like Tommy says, you're popping the hood, you're looking in there, and it's performance traits. And I remember like it was yesterday, Tommy pulled a whiteboard, and we trace. One line was personality, and the other one was performance. I was like, this is where we're at, and this is what's lacking. And I was like, we need to get this out everywhere. I mean, from recruiting and assessing individuals to training to pre and post deployment. I mean, this is an amazing capability where you can scan somebody's brain and map that or match it to our mindset profile, which is the other part of the NESTRE experience, and then really have that picture of how you operate under pressure, how you do in standard normal settings, how your sleep cycle is. I mean, we have it all right there.
Yeah, and I think like that's why I think for me this was so important, because I retired in August of 2024, and I retired like right out of command. And a lot of folks, what they'll do is they'll go find an off ramp job somewhere. But I was like, I want to be a writer. So this is what I have to go do right now. And so I left straight from, battalion command to become a writer, where I'm sitting at home, I'm reading, I'm standing in front of a computer all day. I'm not engaging with people. Like, the stakes these days are like, do I make the deadline for when this paper's due? And like, the first year was novel. It was great going back to this novelty thing. But then like now I'm like been losing my mind lately. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like I'm doing what I wanted to do, but I also like there's something like missing. Like I want to travel. I want an
Yeah.
excitement. And what I got yesterday was like, you're telling me like, hey, this is how your brain has been
Yeah.
trained to perform,
Yeah.
is novelty and high stress.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and that other piece is that Carlos was talking about, the next mindset profile. We're looking at cognitive preferences, which is how does your mind and brain prefer to experience the world? And it was pretty clear, you are a high novelty, complex, rigor, novelty individual. Like your mind is built for that, and that's what it prefers. It does not prefer routine, routinization, normal dynamics in that way. And we've talked about this, that, you know, individuals there are different types of high performers. But if you can understand what makes them that and how they tap into it, now you can be intentional about them being the best version of them. And so, so yeah, I mean, it makes sense that, you'd be having some challenges with when the novelty wears off.
Yeah, there's a story I told yesterday when we were recording an episode of the Better Mind podcast, which, by the way, if you're looking for another podcast right now, check this one out. The hosts are great. And I enjoyed the interview so much. So I'm like looking forward to the series that's coming out here in April to just start listening to these episodes. But I was telling the story yesterday, and like now that I'm out, like I don't face stressful like situations, life and death situations anymore. I'm not like we have this crazy deadline. We've got to get our vehicles from point A to point B, and this one person forgot the keys, and this other person forgot to put gas in their vehicle, and now the whole entire 5,000 person organization is all backed up because of this one individual's mistake. Like I'm not facing any of those things anymore. And so like I don't get stressed out, but the thing that stressed me out the most recently, I was telling you, we finally, we're living in our like at least forever home for now. And now I'm questioning that now that I've hung out with you for 24 hours.
No.
But we're living in the home that, like, hey, this is what I'm retiring to. And back in November, we installed this 8x12 like wooden prefab shed from Home Depot or Lowe's. And we're putting all this stuff in there. And, we've moved every couple years for the last 20 years. And we've, every house we've ever been in, we knew we were going to be leaving. And this is the first time like we've actually invested in and put in a permanent structure. And so that was like the most stressful thing for me because I'm like, holy crap, like I'm going to be putting crap in the shed for the next however many years. I'm going to the same pizza place every single Friday night. Like I got to get out of here. And like, so I started traveling more. And so I'm just like, I'm figuring it out. But yesterday it was kind of like you showing me the data, being like, hey man, like this is how your brain's wired. And now that we know about neuroplasticity and that your brain can be trained, like you guys can help me kind of balance that out a little bit so I'm not going as nuts right now. Right?
Yeah. And it was hilarious because we shared it with you without you telling us that. It was confirming your lived experience, which again made it awesome. But that's the part too that makes this awesome, is that now there's an opportunity to train in ways that we hadn't been able to train before. And so imagine giving some counterbalance, right? To you, especially if you're locked in, and there are a lot of our elite high performers in the world were built with an intensity and a lean for a reason, because it took that level to do the things that they were able to do. You know what I mean? And so, they're typically not like in the middle. You understand what I'm saying? And so, but now we have the capacity with what we're doing to train in a way to be able to bring up some of those things that naturally aren't there, like helping individuals to be able to turn that brain off some, wind down, be able to be good with just being, right? And so that allows us to take it to the next level, where we don't just have to lean off of the super strength and then the bottom falls out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we've kind of been beating around the bush with it, but like, who are some of the like, what are some of the like like the level of athletes that you've been working with so far, and two, like, could you say like some of the names and what you've been doing with them?
Yeah, and so it's funny because all the current ones are like, don't tell anybody anything. This is my secret sauce, and so this is my competitive advantage.
We won't talk about
You
them on
know,
the
and
show.
so
Yeah.
and then Carlos could share too from the you know performance and military space too. But like it's really been the spectrum. I mean, we say every spectrum of elite to everyday performers, and so everything from Olympic athletes to Hall of Famers to Heisman Trophy winners, um, you know, pro baseball, football, track and field, wrestling, um, chess, uh, esports, gamers.
Games, yeah.
By the way, gamers have
Craziest.
some of the best
No, I'm sorry.
brains. I mean, it is. I'm like people going like that gaming, and I'm like, yeah, just look at the data first, and so like, and getting a chance to see the dynamics around um, some of these individuals is outstanding. And we did Calvin Johnson, aka Megatron, if you're familiar with first ballot Hall of Famer from the Detroit Lions, in 6'5", 230. He ran a 4.3, and just a human that, he got the nickname Megatron because one of his teammates, I think, gave him the nickname, or another player did, that you're not even human. Like you're a transformer, you're Megatron. And it fit perfectly. And so, but being able to pop the hood and realizing like Megatron wasn't just tall, big, and fast. When you popped the hood, he had like a supercomputer. He was actually like a real transformer.
Yeah.
It was like, and I remember being like, players really had no chance. You couldn't outsmart him. And then it makes sense. He came from a family of doctors. He had one of the highest Wonderlic scores, as a football athlete. Went to Georgia Tech. It wasn't just football. He actually was, and he had one of the things that was unique to you too, logical processing under high stress. And he told the story, and strategic planning under high stress he said, I run every route in the first quarter because of what I want to do in the fourth quarter. I'm thinking about the fourth quarter in the first quarter. And I'm like, and so it's just fascinating to be able to do that. And even with you, like being able to hear from you, the stuff you've done, and to see the data align with, how you're wired. We get to geek out about it, man. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah. With like, what are some of you're like, do any of those stand out? Like what, some of these professional athletes learned about themselves that they were like, oh, that's what I always thought. But like now
Yeah, there's some, we're looking forward to getting some of these out to share with the world, Feel like I feel my co-host somewhere around, just like eyes beaming on me, like don't spill it yet. So we got some
okay.
we got some awesome ones coming. But like I'll just share, typically when you start to see data that like makes it unique, you start to go, okay, now we can see why. Like, someone being a high alpha, which is high novelty, high real time, fluid, individuals from their cognitive preference. But then you look at their brain data and they have like high cerebral cognitive capability, like logical processing and reasoning, which typically super high alphas aren't reasoning individuals. And so you start to see this like unique, mixture that makes them stand out as outliers. And so we get to see that, or what combination of things start to come together. We thought we would see a lot of individuals who would have stress capacity as one of their high performing areas. It's one of the ones we rarely see uh, in these high performers. That actual stress capacity is one of their superpowers, which we found really.
Yeah, I imagine that, again, like, because you're looking under the hood of like Ferraris, Corvettes, and everything else, like, just the data that you're getting from that and like what you're learning about the human mind, um, from that. It's so fascinating.
I mean, we have to continue to remind ourselves like there's work to do, but like it's absolutely fascinating. I'll call Carlos and be like, we just had a breakthrough. what we're doing and what the data's saying, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, "It's outstanding."
I want to talk about like what you do with that data because I want to tie that into to where I see potential with the military and veterans.
Yeah.
But let's go because we talked about like some of my strengths yesterday, or some of my what you call in your program ceilings. But then like there's also things that you saw with me that you call floors, which are areas that I can train. Could you just share one of those and like don't hurt my feelings or anything on this
We all have
episode?
them. We all have
The
floors.
cool part is we get so close together because I know you.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but yeah, we do. We share the ceilings and the floors, and we do that so people can get a full idea of who they are and where they, how they're wired. And I think the part that resonated when we were talking was, this idea that your brain is recruiting, you know, over recruiting resources and not turning off and holding on long. And so you have this like triple whammy of high cost overtime with no let up. And so, we were talking just about how expensive that becomes over time. And what does that practically look like, right? You know, thoughts constantly rolling, right? And then, you start getting later into the day, you don't have juice and gas for the things that you need juice and gas for. And so, you know, burning, flooring the engine, uh, almost literally all the time, becomes a cognitive cost and a practical, challenge. And so that was one of the things that really was the thing that really stood out. That was kind of the flip side of, here's a superpower, but here's what it costs.
Yeah, and as we were like talking about that, and I was like reflecting on it, since the session yesterday, and like everybody, like people who know me are like, oh man, how do you do all this? How are you working like 70 hours a week? Also doing a podcast, also doing newsletters, also running a blog, and all these things. Like and like you had a family, so like how are you doing all that? Like I can't not do that. Like my brain is just like it won't turn off.
That's your comfort. That's your
Yeah,
comfort zone.
yeah, it is. And
Anything
it's
other than that, you're uncomfortable.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
extremely uncomfortable.
But there's a cost with
There's a
that.
cost, and I think that's the thing is like what people don't know is like I'm constantly burning myself out. Like when I was in command, I think it was like 7 crashes, what I call crashes, where like Friday I would climb into bed and then not get out of bed
Mhm.
until like Monday morning.
Yeah. You
And
gotta reset.
yeah, people are bringing me food. My kids are like, I'm like feeling bad because I can't play with my kids, and then even now, like by like we were talking about it, like I have no margins left for like anything, like any serious conversations, any drama past like 6:37. And so today I go in for my first NESTRE training session, and it was crazy. So they hook me up, they do the scan, and Everett, the trainer, is like, "Oh man," he's like, "Your brain is active today," and I was like that's like my normal, right?
Yeah.
And so I went through 2 rounds of training. That was it. And when we were talking about training, like I don't know what the hell you guys are doing, Tommy, but it was like these like 2 very short sessions, not even 5 minutes. And he like ran another scan. And like for the first time in a long time, like I felt calm.
Mm.
And it was
Yeah.
weird. Like I felt like I just smoked something. I don't know what that's like at all. But if I would imagine if I knew what that was like, that's what it
It'd be
would
something like that.
it would be something like that. But I was like calm. Like my brain was like quieted. And I was like, what the hell did you guys do? And Everett's like, we just trained your brain to shut up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was amazing. And I think like Carlos and I were talking afterwards. Carlos, you got to share your story, man. The first time you went through the
No, I
training
mean,
too.
I was kind of mesmerized with you telling your story because it's in high performers. It's a common theme that we see, right? You're operating at this level, and everybody tells you, well, that's what makes you tick. That's what makes you good at what you do, right? Well, you got to take some time off and calm down. And it's like, well, I don't know how to do that, right? This is my comfort zone. So with NESTRE, the great thing is by popping the hood and looking at it, there it is. In a few minutes you can train to kind of wind that down, rheostat that, dial it back down to find a little better balance. And and that second and third order effects of that are just incredible, from you being cranky, you being able to manage your weekend, driving, multitask on other things, your health, your sleep cycles. With me, it's funny. I've said this story a couple of times. And I came in, and like most of us in the military, we're skeptics, right? We're like, what is this thing, right? I'm a pretty smart guy. What are you talking about? There's some Jason Bourne stuff here that we're gonna start dialing my brain, and yeah, right, let's go. And of course, like all of us high achievers, like, yeah, make sure you crank it up, Tommy. Hey, he's like, okay, all right, we'll do a session or two, and then we'll crank it up. Again, when I say crank it up, it's 3 minutes sitting in there. So we did our initial session. My baseline was established. I did the mindset profile. I was like, okay, this, now what? Well, so Tommy now has my data. He's seen inside my brain. There's no, I can't hide anymore, right? He knows who I am, just like he knows who you are. He's done the mind read, and he's like, so what do you want to work on, right? Everything looks pretty decent. Is there anything you want to work on? I said, well, yeah, I'd like some better sleep. Like most of us, I don't sleep very well. Just motor functions, maybe. As I get older, I'd like to, just kind of keep that going, and then maybe memory. Retention, Alzheimer's runs in my family. So yeah, let's work on those 3 areas. I was like, perfect. Those are the areas that I was going to recommend. That's what he said. So we do one session, 3 minutes, and in the morning, my first one, I was like, oh, okay, that was it, And he's like, yep. But that was like you taking an exam for about 8 hours. I was like, come on, I'll drive home tonight. I'll be back in Tampa tonight. Be back tomorrow. No issues. He's like, no. We have a room for you at the spa here at Lake Nona. Go there for lunch. And you're gonna take a nap for an hour, and then we're gonna come and get you. Make sure you set your alarm on your phone, because you're gonna be out. And I laughed. Right, I was like, Tommy, I haven't taken a nap since kindergarten when we had that little cot.
He was offended.
I said, come on, there's no nappy time here. It's like, okay. So it's like, there's the floor of the room. Rolled up my jacket. I'll put the alarm. He closed the door. I was gone. Gone for an hour straight, dreaming, REM sleep, deep. Alarm goes off. Wake up. Kind of when you wake up in a hotel, you don't know where the bathroom is. You don't know where you're waking up. It was like that. I was completely lost. Came back upstairs, and him and, Tommy and Everett, they're looking at me. I was like, oh, yeah, glassy eyes. It's like, and I was like, what did you guys do to my brain? What just happened? I just slept, one of the deepest sessions ever, and went back, did a new baseline, and right away you could see the scores improving just by that one session and being able to rest and recoup. Because that's another thing. And I'm not in the medical field. Tommy can expand on this, but with neuroplasticity, the beauty of the brain is, it's almost like winding it up. Once you get going and you do a couple sessions, you just let go. And the brain continues to learn from that new pathway that you just opened up. It's like having that traffic jam, that Gordian knot inside your brain that, it learns to go around it, right? If you get a concussion, TBI, etc., the brain's going to figure out a way to go around that knot. With this, and the software that we have at NESTRE, you're able to dial in and peel the onion back exactly to that frequency and unravel that knot and target that area by you doing the training. And then when you walk out and you leave, it continues to work on itself. It continues to self-improve. So, people say, hey, well, how many times do you have to do this? You got to come here every week. It's like, no, you do it a few times and then the brain picks it up. and it starts to unravel and fixing itself and going back through those new pathways or old pathways that were blocked. So again, my experience is not as dramatic as some of these folks that come in with some big issues. Like you could go and see some of the testimonials from the veterans. We did a VA CRADA, a cooperative research agreement with them. We had about 20 plus vets that came in, folks that had been on pills, bags of pills for 20 plus years because of PTSD and other issues. And it's incredible to see their story and hear their stories. They're like, hey, in 2 days, it's like somebody took my brain, rinsed it under cold water, and put it back in, and I have a new brain. I don't take any more pills. I am back to being myself. And you hear from their family members, their spouses, they go, I have my husband or my wife back. You know, it's incredible. So again, that was just me coming in and doing my initial, you know, and I was like, hey, where do you need me to help out? This needs to get out to the force. We need to put this out there. And of course, me with my background in special operation community, that was my natural point of entry. And we got into these long discussions, you know, whiteboard sessions about, of course, from the athlete side, the NFL and the professional athletes, and how it's a side by side with the elite performers in the military. The path, the trajectory from identifying, assessing, selecting to training to going through the pipeline and deploying, post-deployment, injuries, rehabbing, retirement, post-retirement, reintegration. It's identical to a professional athlete. And that's what, I mean, we just spent hours talking about this. We're like, this is incredible. How is this not out there right now?
I recently had the chance to travel down to NESTRE headquarters in Lake Nona, Florida, and actually go through the full NESTRE experience myself. They wired my brain up, mapped it, trained it, and I'll be honest with you, I walked away a believer in what they're doing and the science behind it. What I appreciated most is that this isn't just a vague mental performance talk. They're giving you real data about how your brain operates, how you respond under stress, where you're performing well, and where you can improve. Right now, NESTRE has 3 locations where you can get this done in person: Monterey, California, Winter Park, Florida, and Lake Nona, Florida, which is the headquarters I visited. And they wanted to do something special for the From the Green Notebook audience. If you book a consultation using the code TEAMG, that's TEAMG, you'll get 50% off. That consultation includes a full brain map, a mindset profile, so you can better understand how your brain prefers to operate, and cognitive scorecards that show how you're currently performing and how to improve. And if you're nowhere near one of the locations but still curious about it, you can download the NESTRE app and get 30 days free using code TEAMG when you sign in. After that, it's only $9.99 a month. Again, that's nestreperformance.com. NESTRE performance.com. Now back to the show. You know, for me, like this worked. Like, for all the good things that we do in the military, we are horrible about piling on way too many tasks in a way short amount, like a very short time period that are impossible to do, but we somehow get it done. And so like that was the life I lived for 20 years, and it served me in that capacity, and like, Tommy, we were talking about like purpose, and there's a lot of like squishy things, but really what it boils down to is like the brain science, like how is our brain functioning? How is our brain performing? And so, now that I'm in this new phase where like that's not really required of me anymore to live,
Right.
Comfortably, right? But like I was talking to a friend about what I'm doing down here, and they were like laughing because like I can read for a little bit. And typically what I'll do is I'll just like, I have like this book stack next to me where I'm just like, I'll read read a couple pages, and all of a sudden like I lose focus, and I'll just pick up another book and keep going. And that's how I read like 8 to 12 books at a time.
Yeah.
But that's how like I keep going with books. And like, sometimes I'll like pick up a book and then I'll put it down. I'll pick up my phone, go through maybe like 5 or 7 different apps. Like I'll hit Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn, look at email, go back to Instagram. Like I'm all over the place. Then I put the phone down, go back to the book. And they were like laughing at me. They're like, you talk about read, write, reflect on From the Green Notebook. You should be real is like read, scroll a little bit, write, scroll a little bit, reflect, scroll a little bit. Yeah, because like my like brain's just like constantly like at this like crazy state, and it like pisses me off. It served me, and yeah, I've produced like a lot of great things from it. But like it literally drives me crazy sometimes. And so Everett today, like he showed me when I finished the training, like he did another brain scan, and like one, I was already feeling different, which is weird. Two, he showed it, and like my brain had calmed down like a quarter of what it was when we went in there.
Yeah.
And I could see it like on the screen. I was like, man, this is amazing.
It's it's awesome. I mean, when you can, one, when you know there's a science to it. Two, to some degree, it doesn't matter if you don't personally feel it, because that's the whole purpose of it. And then three, to be able to quantify it, to be able to see it, it's just game changing. Like it makes it real. You know what I mean? And it feeds off of that. And that's a part of what we think is possible. You know, we say, you know, we're going to take this, there's performance and then there's pathology. We're going to, this was performance. What if we can train as opposed to treat? Right. And we know there's a, there's a lane and a necessity for pathology and treatment. But what if we created a parallel lane? What if we created a training and performance experience, right? Where individuals could look at it from that reframe. Um, that you don't have to be broken to get better, right? And then what if you can have the opportunity, just like what you were saying, is, you know, what once served me now kind of a challenge, and how do I? And now you're able to train it, right? That part has been awesome, being able to see people go, I never thought about it because I never thought it was possible. And now it's like, well, what really is possible? You know, um, how much, what else can I train? What other opportunities are there for me to get better?
Yeah, and Carlos was talking about the 3 minutes of training he did, and then like he went and took a nap. I was like, and I got like I was talking to Everett today when he was doing mine, and like, we're both military, so I'm gonna be humble for a minute. I couldn't do 3 minutes. I did 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I did 2 minutes, and then like I did the first two, and just like in my garage gym where like I'm trying to get better at something, I'm putting 25s or whatever.
Yeah.
And Everett, that's the language Everett used. He's
Yeah.
like, all right, hey, I'm gonna put a little bit more weights
Wait.
on here for the second session. And he's like, I'm like, all right, we do another 2 minutes. I'm like, man, like that was a lot. And he's like, yeah, like Tommy texted me before and was like, don't go too hard on him today because he has a podcast with us this afternoon. And so I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yes.
But it was enough to make me feel different. And I have
Yeah.
no idea
Yeah.
what you guys are. Again, like I won't get into specifics of it, but like it was pretty wild how the whole thing played out today.
Yeah. We just tell people you gotta see it, gotta experience it, because we want to make the applied science a lifestyle, because we believe everyone should have an opportunity to exercise and strength train the mind and the brain. What if we looked at strength training from the neck up, and how could that change people's trajectories if they had access to it? Um, and it's just, again, we've been used to thinking about the mind and the brain from a broken pathology place. But what if we started from a different premise? What if we started from a premise that the mind and the brain are performance engines, high performance engines? And what if we discover our, high performance engine in the areas where it can be tuned up, trained, pushed to be even more optimal, more efficient, more elite for life, for family, for kids, for spouses, for work, right? Who would want to be an elite husband? You know what I mean? Like, I want to be elite in that, and just kind of some of the conversations we were talking about. we think that it's the future, and we get to see it every day in the labs.
And Carlos, you and I were talking earlier, like, as a former a retired Green Beret, like, what are some of the applications you could see, that the military, like folks in the military, like active duty folks, could use?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So very similar to the professional athlete path, where um, identifying the right the adequate performance traits for the specific job or MOS. I mean, the possibilities are endless. We could sit down here and map out, from putting folks through basic training and figuring out, instead of just doing an ASVAB or personality assessment, really where does this individual fit in just by doing a 3-minute scan? Is he going to be a great drone operator? Is he going to be a good infantryman, or is he, it just adds another dimension to that assessment piece. And then you start looking at the in the unit, right? The life of that military member, where it's a constant baseline assessment or improvement. And I'll go on a little sidetrack here because it's an important note. We talked about this in the past, and it's the same with the professional athletes, or any athlete for that matter. We've been on deployments or military units where we go, yeah, I mean, I'd follow that guy, to the end of the world, or I wouldn't follow that guy to the latrine, right? That's the common saying, and it's just because they're a high performance in training, and so well likable. They have all these personality traits that kind of fit in the mold. But then we deploy, or we see, the situation changes. A stressful environment, or there's something happens downrange, and that individual that we had on a pedestal all of a sudden falls apart for whatever reason. It could be he was running on empty and nobody knew that his tank was empty, or he had other things going on, or it just can't perform under pressure. And then you see the other side of the spectrum where, that driver and the motor pool, and we hear these stories all the time. There's a firefight, and guess who came out to, pull the wounded out of the ambush site? And guess who, the guy that you were like, what? That's, Smitty from the motor pool, he's doing that? What if you could see, not all of it, but most of this by popping the hood and seeing in there and being like, hey, this guy has a special brain, or this guy would be perfect to be working in, the techie side of the unit, right? That's what he's good at. He's got that kind of attention to detail, or he's a big thinker, and he operates well, in this low stress environment, but at prolonged stays, right? Being in a height site for 5 days, we're just sitting there looking at a target. So again, the life of that service member, when you're active duty, there's just so many opportunities. And then now you talk about leadership being able to identify your skill traits, your performance traits of your individuals, and group people in the right settings, in the right teams, and make power teams, right? So the life or the organization, and improving the strength of the unit, it's just a force multiplier.
Yeah, what I was thinking too is like, like one thing about combat or these high stress situations, like they audit our abilities. Like
Totally.
you and I can say, hey, like I'm gonna go run to the sound of the guns. But then when the guns actually start shooting, or like shit starts hitting the proverbial fan, that's when you really learn like what somebody possesses. But like I was thinking about it, like let's say I'd done this before command, and like I came and did this assessment, and Tommy's like, hey, like your logical processing is actually kind of low in high stressful situations. Now that we're talking about the brain as a muscle that you can train, right? Like
Yeah.
that's something that like I could be like, Tommy, man, like I don't want to be the guy like screeching my head off when something starts going wrong, like, is there something you can do? And like, you could develop a training program
Yes,
for me
absolutely.
to before I get to that point where I embarrass myself in front of Carlos and the guys, right?
We
That's a great point, Joe. You know, we were I went up to brief at I was at Fort Bragg last, I don't know, about 5-6 months ago at one of the small conferences there at the schoolhouse where they teach, you know, CQB and close quarter battle and sniper operations, etc. And I gave a short briefing on NESTRE and the capabilities, and immediately, you know, as soon as I was done, 3, 4, 5 instructors came by and grabbed me. He's like, "Wait, you mean to tell me that I can take a guy who's a complete stud and he's done amazing, but he had a bad day or he had, you know, something's just not right. You know, I can re-baseline him, put him behind the screen for 3, 4 minutes and possibly work on that one area as an improvement, you know, AAR note from the instructor to the student and put him back out there and then just put him at the next level." I was like, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're running a pilot at the schoolhouse here, hopefully at the end of the year, and then taking it out to the Army Special Forces units to do a pilot assessment on how to do that. So,
you know, I'll add to that. Early on when we started doing this, you know, we were at a now P4 school at a certain school. I'm not going to say the school. One of the coaches, they heard about this, you know, and we're in there with all the coaches, and he sees it. He goes, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, but he goes, "So you're telling me we could figure out who doesn't belong here, right? Who
basically,
doesn't need to be here,
basically,
right?" And then all the coaches looked over at him, and I was like, "What I'm telling you is, you have the opportunity to train everyone to increase the success for those who will be here." And so he quickly went to the lowest thing of the barrel is weed out as opposed to train up. And and it was like, if plasticity wasn't real, then weed out would make sense. Because plasticity is real and what we're looking at is plasticity, what we're saying is, well, imagine the possibilities if you train them up. And the goal, you know, isn't we do tests to weed out because we're saying we want to see who has it because we're assuming that what it is, right, is in its kind of final state. But what if there's a probability to increase performance of all of them?
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to say it. I mean, that's basically what those instructors were asking me. You know, because up until that point, I was like, it's weeding out, folks. Well, how about we leveling up, bringing them up? I mean, yeah.
And something else too, like, and I know this is like, you know, probably something that like some high performers wrestle with. You know, for me, like one of the easiest ways I found to quiet my mind, which isn't great, is alcohol. You know, like having a couple of drinks at the end of the day.
Sure.
You know, or maybe like, you know, as I go into the weekend, having even more drinks, you know, just
Right.
to shut it down a little bit. And so, you know, I can't tell you how many people I know that have like ruined their careers, their lives from substance abuse, or, you know, gotten behind the wheel, gotten a DUI, and completely taint their career. And so, you know, for those guys like me who just struggle to turn their brains off, you know, doing a training program like this, you know, especially for veterans,
Absolutely.
I just, again, like that's what like my eyes like lit up today. Well, they didn't light up; they were like glassed over.
Yeah.
Because like you guys messed me up.
Wait till tomorrow.
But it was so good. It was so good. Like I was like, man, like for the first time in I don't know how long, like my brain got quiet for just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, so like, and you know, one of the things that you brought up that's huge is as humans we adapt, like we find ways to cope or to manage. And we see it in sports a lot. We see it in corporate. We see it in just everyday individuals dealing with the load. And you know, and what we try to get people to understand is you know, like the example you gave with you know, to go drink it to quiet the mind. What we're saying is you're actually not quieting your mind. You're quieting the sensitivity to your mind. The mind is still. You get what I'm saying? And it's going to be right there once the sensitivity wears off, which is what unfortunately creates the cycle, because you're trying to do naturally what should be happening. And so we need resources and tools that, like, what individuals are actually seeking is the human side of you trying to get the counterbalance. We just haven't created and have the modalities, like, you know, high performers and individuals like that. You're living in an abnormal world. You're having abnormal level load. And so we have to be thinking in the same way. What type of abnormal type of solutions, how can we counter the load in a way that allows people to get that balance?
So I want to, like, we've been talking like around like what you guys do. There's really like two options folks have. They can come here like I did, come to Nestry Labs and get the work done. Like that, all that information is on your website, right?
Yeah.
But I want to talk about like folks that are interested, because you have an app too,
Yeah.
where you don't have to do that. Can
Yeah.
we talk about the app a little bit?
Yeah. So when we built the app, the whole thing was, we know the in-person training experience and the in-app training experience was kind of bookend in that experience. That digital experiences are native to a generation, but also people are trying to find ways, to have it accessible at their fingertips. And so we said, let's take the data and the insights we've gotten from the lab, and how could we create a digital environment to give people an opportunity to exercise their mind and brain. There are a lot of apps that are looking to, as we say, you can do one or two things. You can work to lighten the load or increase the strength for the lift. And both are necessary. But what we saw is most things were looking at how do you lighten the load. And we said we want to take the position of strength. How do we create an app that can increase the strength for the lift? And so in the app, we wanted to create this non-linear digital environment where you go in, you get your NESTRE mindset profile, you learn about who you are, how you're wired. The app itself customizes to you. It's like your brain coach in your pocket. And we put in there adaptive and evidence-based cognitive trainings in the app. It's a workout. Everything we do is a workout. And so you may think you're playing some fun games. It's a workout. And then we've done some other brain-based or brain-centric experiences in there, mental experiences, mindset content. You get to hear from the world of high performers in the app. We've created brain-based instrumentals. The whole thing was, can we give someone a place and space, right on their phones, to go to, just like a gym, and different aspects that they can come in and focus on when they want, when they're ready, when they need it, to be able to have access to it.
That's great. And then, as far as like, do you guys have any inroads right now with the Department of Defense?
Yeah, so there's a couple opportunities that we got proposals in the works, and like I said, that pilot that we talked about with Special Forces Command coming here at the end of the year. But like anything with the government, it's slow. We had government shutdowns and all those things. But yeah, we now that we've completed the VA CRADA and we have all that data, we're on a couple things that we're looking at. We're on the H2F contract, the holistic health and fitness contract. Also, so waiting on that to get final funding so we can be a part of those gym facilities at the bases around the country. I think it's up to like 164 facilities that they're going to build. And yeah, we're looking at a couple other avenues with SOCOM, like being part of the preservation of the force and families contract and some of the other things.
And one of the things that we have, like, it's very familiar with folks in the military, is these things called like mobile training teams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you offer that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one of the great things about Nestre is highly mobile, right? It's the entire kit fits in a small Pelican case. It's a laptop, the QEEG cap, some of the cleaning materials, and a screen, or yeah, some type of TV screen that we can project the exercises, and a quiet room, a small quiet room that we could go and do the sessions and the scans. So we can go anywhere with the technicians.
One of the things that I did, going into command was I used a tool. It's called Insights Discovery, and it was by a company called PZI. They offered it to us, and so these were like personality assessments that the top five, myself, the command sergeant major, the
Mm,
executive officer, the operations officer, and the operations sergeant major took. And so we all took these tests, and then we all sat down and we shared results.
mm.
And a lot of times in units, it takes like 6 months to a year of of everybody stepping on each other and pissing each other off to finally say like, okay, like Carlos likes his stuff this way, and Tommy, don't say this to Tommy, you'll piss him off. But we were able to in like one test come in and sit down, and I remember the executive officer was like, man, it felt like somebody followed me around for 20 years and then gave me this readout. And so once we knew that, it was no longer personal. It wasn't
Yeah.
like Tommy hates me, Carlos is an asshole. Like it was like that's how Carlos is, that's how Tommy is, and so like let's all work around that, and let's work together, knowing that those are your strengths, those are your weaknesses. And so again, this is another tool I
Huge.
would imagine because again, that's me filling stuff out, but this is you're like literally like popping the hood. Not like you're not cutting open a brain, but like you're like there's no surgery involved, but like you're literally
Yeah,
popping the hood of a head and looking inside of it. And I could imagine that now you're able to be like, hey, Tommy, his brain performs this way. Carlos' brains perform this way. Joe's is this way. This is how we're going to come together as a
100%.
team
Absolutely.
and like, perform this,
Yeah.
perform at this level. And like, hey, Joe's probably going to need a little bit of training over here. So you can like, bring that floor up a little bit to make us a
Absolutely.
more efficient team.
Yeah, those personality tests and all those types that are out there are amazing. Great. I mean, if you're a unit leader right now and you're not doing that to match make and build powerful teams, I mean, you're behind. But this is performance, right? It's performance based. So, like you said, adding that extra, bolting on that extra piece to the kit bag to really find out what makes people tick and what is the performance trait of my individuals, either the closest to the boat or those out there and alone and unafraid. So that's back when I started here. That was the light bulb moment: the personality versus the performance.
I mean, we talked about it early on, like the 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 impact of optimizing teams, organizations, families. Like people talk about, from a leadership cohesion standpoint, right? The process of teams coming together. But you start to take the guesswork out, and then it's data also. Like there's something about data that as humans we have this less of a defensive mechanism around it because data isn't judging you, if that makes sense. And so, so you start to think about, well, what if you did that? I mean, we would get people would get their data and they go, no, no, my wife needs to see this. No, I need to my boss. If my boss knew this, or my team should do this, or I'm gonna do this with my family, or my corporation. Well, what if I knew all of my, and then the possibilities start to make so much sense that we've been doing performance at the level that we've been capable of with the technology we've had, and now we're about to enter a whole nother era of being able to optimize human possibilities, and that's the part that we're seeing in real time that we want the world to be able to experience it, that we think it's it's the next frontier.
Well, I've got several more questions for you, gentlemen, but Tommy, your team messed me up today, and I like all I want to do right
I
now.
tried.
Take a nap.
All I want to do is take a nap.
I
So,
tried. I tried.
so we're gonna go ahead and like end this now, so I can go take a nap. But hey, I just want to say thanks to both of you. Again, this has been mind blowing. If you listen to this podcast check out this video on YouTube. Like this, like I'm in a green environment right now. Like the wall is green behind me because the studio and this equipment is so amazing. I just want to keep coming back, even if I could just keep doing episodes.
Yes.
This
Here
is
in
absolutely
the
a recruitment
NESTRE
ploy.
environment.
This is 100% a recruitment ploy. This is recruitment 101.
Yes.
Yeah. Like we will let you do stuff in NESTRE. Like if you do your podcast, you got to do stuff for NESTRE. I'm like, okay, sold.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I'm sold now. The guy that like sold me on it, former collegiate D1 athlete,
Yeah.
was just telling me about this, telling
My
me about
guy,
the story.
TJ
is
Harden,
amazing.
shout out.
And
Big alpha.
and like he's like, you got to see it to believe it. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, whatever, TJ. No, I didn't. He was a big guy, so I was like, okay, TJ.
He is big.
But like, yeah, I mean, again, game changer. For folks that are listening or watching this, please watch this episode. This is a really nice studio. I've never been in something this nice before. But for folks listening or watching this episode, like, go check out NESTRE's website, download the app. If you're listening to this episode, we've got special deals in here from the Green Notebook listeners, with our partnership now with NESTRE. Because again, this isn't something that like they're not paying me, but like this is something I believe in so much so that I'm like, yeah, just put your ads on the podcast as long as I get to record this episode in a really nice studio, which is what's I'm just kidding. That never happened. But like again, huge believer in what you guys are doing, Tommy, Carlos. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Let me do it here with you. And I'm really excited. Tomorrow's my last day of brain training down here, but I'm looking forward, after I sleep after that, I'm looking forward to taking the app, going back home and keep going because I got to do something
Awesome.
to quiet the brain down. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, this is great.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of From the Green Notebook podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us gain visibility and the opportunity to help more people on their leadership journey. Also, make sure you check out our website at www.fromthegreennotebook.com. There, you can listen to past episodes, read leadership articles written by military leaders from around the world. You can sign up for our monthly reading list email where you can learn about new books that are coming out, and our Sunday reflection email that comes out every Sunday morning. Is really short. It's a 2-minute read, but I guarantee you it's going to start your week off on the right foot. Finally, make sure you follow us on Twitter at FTGN Notebook, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for From the Green Notebook. Again, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. I am humbled by the opportunity to learn these lessons alongside you. So please join us next week for another episode of From the Green Notebook, where we're going to help you lead with the best version of yourself.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon.